Good evening, everyone. My name is Anita, and I welcome everyone on behalf of Manhattan Meditation Center. Thank you for joining us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Zoom. Very warm
I'm sorry,
welcome.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Sister Judy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Anita. You sound clear to me.
Okay. So, Sister, maybe you can increase the volume on your device.
And Sarah's given you a thumbs up as well, so I think
Okay.
we're good.
We're good. Okay. So, going back to welcoming, very warm welcome to everyone who has made the time to be with us today evening. Before I introduce today's topic, a couple of just housekeeping things. BK Manhattan Center has a YouTube channel. All these talks are uploaded on our channel. You can also search them through the youtube.com, but if you subscribe to our channel, it makes it easier for you to just access them. So you can listen to this talk again, or you can watch the previous, whatever we have, the lectures, what we have done earlier on different topics. The same talks are available also on the Facebook, so you can access them via Facebook too. Everyone has a control of their mic. We request you to keep them on mute unless you have a question, which you want to ask Sister. Unless you have a question you want to ask Sister Judy. She is the facilitator for today's talk. So coming to today's topic, an introverted mind. Very often we hear about people say, oh, blah, blah is extroverted, and they say blah, blah is introverted. But most of the time, the term refers to the person, not the mind. But in fact, if we just stop for a second and reflect on it, the nature of the person which we label as extrovert or introvert, behind that nature is the mind, which actually plays all the game. So in spirituality, we always say it is inside out. So whatever is here inside in your mind, that is what's going to manifest in outside world. So let's hear from Sister Judy how to use this introverted mind to our advantage. So it gives a balance, peace, and joy in the life. Sister Judy, very warm welcome to you on behalf of everyone.
Thank you, Anita. It's very nice to be here with you. It's an interesting topic, this introverted mind, because I think generally we, in our culture at least, people really value an extroverted personality. I think that's usually it, right? You're considered to be lucky if you're extroverted, and maybe not so lucky if you're introverted. So what we're saying is actually, it's good to consider how would your life be different if you had an introverted mind. So let's think first a little bit about what it means to be extroverted. What does it mean to have an extroverted mind? because this is what is the norm. So an extroverted mind is focused outside. It's like it's always scanning the landscape, the people around us, the news headlines, the scenes in front of us, our family, what's going on with our family, what's going on with our friends, what's going on with COVID, what's going on with whatever diagnoses people are getting, whatever worries you have. The extroverted mind is focused outside, and it's sort of attaching to these things. And you would recognize this, right? This tends to be the way we operate. And sometimes we'll get up in the morning and the first thing we'll do is we'll turn on the news, we'll listen to what's going on in the world, and immediately the mind is pulled outside. So what's wrong with that? Why isn't that okay? I mean, don't we want to be in touch with the outside world? And I would say, yes, we do. We want to be in touch with the outside world. And when we are absorbed in the outside world, we are usually fluctuating. It keeps us a little bit off balance. When things are good, we're up. When things are bad, we're down. So the weather's good, I'm up, I'm in a good mood. My stocks are up, I'm in a good mood. My mother's not doing so well, I'm in a bad mood. Up and down we go. And so this feeling that I would say this is sort of a cultural phenomenon now that we are, and it has been, this isn't new. That we are absorbed outside. It also includes things we want to buy or own, the shopping that we do, all of the trips we plan, all of those things that go on in our minds, the wanting from outside, the absorption with the outside world keep us sort of out of ourselves and keeps us a bit off balance. And it's so much the norm that I think most of us just presume that that's the way life is. I have a friend who says you're only as happy as your least happy child. Right? I mean, whatever's going on with our children or whatever, that we can't be any happier than that. That our inner state is a necessary reflection of that outer state. So most people are, you might say most people are asleep. They haven't really thought about that they could make their inner state different by making their mind different. But tonight, what we're considering together is what might we do with our minds that would allow us to make our inner state different. Now, why does it matter? What would be the benefit of being able to make our minds introverted and beautiful? I mean, I would say this: you could be introverted and not beautiful, right? Because if you become introverted, but you have bad things going on inside your mind, then it's not a beautiful mind. So I'm really proposing together that you can make a choice to have an introverted mind and to have a beautiful mind. So what would happen for us if we had that? Why does the condition of our mind matter? So a few things happen. When we are oriented inside, when our face, instead of being absorbed or attached outside, is absorbed inside, we develop a kind of inner power or inner capacity we begin to see that actually we can work with certain thoughts, we can work with certain feelings, we can invoke those and create sort of an inner state, an inner power. It allows us to be attuned to what's going on with us. A lot of us can be uncomfortable. Think of it this way. Sometimes your leg can be falling asleep, but you don't notice because you're so focused outside that you don't notice that your leg's starting to go to sleep and your foot's got that little prickly feeling. It's the same thing with other kinds of discomfort. You can have sadness in your heart or worry in your heart and sort of be overriding it. You're so watching television or listening to radio or talking on the phone or checking text, etc., that you're overriding what's going on in the heart until it becomes gigantic. We miss the early signals because we're so focused outside. And so when we have an introverted mind, we are more likely to notice what's going on inside. We're more likely to be able to invoke the thoughts or the power we need. We're more likely to be able to find solutions. It's big. It's really big. Another thing with an introverted mind, people who are extroverted, which is most of us, most of the time, we find ourselves getting very tired. If I could count the number of people who just say, I'm just tired, I'm just fatigued, I just feel spent. I don't know, I haven't done anything, I haven't gone anywhere, but I'm just kind of exhausted. Well, we become exhausted when the mind is continually pulling things from the outside. It weakens us, it wears us down. But when we develop an introverted mind, the mind becomes a place where you can take a rest. It becomes a beautiful place, a place you can go inside and actually renew yourself, actually rest, become quiet. I know this is a hard concept. If you haven't been working with your mind in this way, you can think, what is she talking about? But honestly, we are at the helm, or we should be at the helm. I guess we could say many of us have put our mind on automatic pilot. And the mind is racing down the road like the self-driving cars, right? And no one's at the wheel. It's just kind of picking up whatever goes on, and it's tiring itself out because it's always dashing around. So what I'm proposing is that we can actually turn the mind into a really restful and beautiful and creative and powerful place. And that will give us inner capacity. It will give us the ability to know when things are not okay for us. We won't say yes to things that we want to say no to. We won't go to things that we really are too tired to go to. We'll notice when we're worried or afraid, and we'll act on that. Right? So it's quite a big difference between being extroverted, focused and connected outside, and focused and connected inside. And one important thing to understand about this business of having an introverted mind is that if we don't have an introverted mind, we're actually not at the wheel of the chariot. We're not creating the life we want. One thing to understand is that the life we're living is the life we've created for ourselves. Even unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, we chose where we wanted to live, we applied for the jobs we have, but sometimes unintentionally, we have done things that have made our lives uncomfortable. And so when we become introverted, when we become attuned to the mind inside, now we're aware of moments that we have choices that we didn't even notice before. So there's a lot of reasons to develop this introverted capacity, a lot of reasons. And if you've been a meditator for a long time, and I'm going to presume that all of us who are in this conversation tonight, I'm going to presume you're somewhere on a spiritual path, because if you weren't, you probably wouldn't be here tonight with us. You'd be doing something else, right? You'd be, I don't know, watching sports or out, be watching the news. I don't know what you'd be doing, but you wouldn't be sitting here thinking about the quality of your mind and the quality of your thoughts. So this is a fundamental notion in a spiritual life. It's fundamental that you go from being an extroverted, having an extroverted mind that is primarily attuned to the world you're in and the people you're in and the situations you're in, versus having an introverted mind where you're attuned to the inner state you're in. And you're creating the state that you want to be in. You know, as I said a few minutes ago, we tend to think that, well, I don't have any choice. Things aren't so good for me. I don't like my boss. People downstairs make a ton of racket. I hear them all the time. The trains aren't on time anymore. They used to be on time. They're not on time anymore. Right? All of these external things that make me unhappy. So we live continuously. We live in these states where we are sort of the victims. We don't have to do that. We can choose to be in a certain state. And that's what I want you to kind of, if you don't think about anything else tonight but this, think about this, that this is about choosing the inner state in which you do your life, right? So how are we going to do this? So I think the first thing to do when you're contemplating how to make my mind introverted and how to make my mind beautiful is to become aware of your mind. To become aware of your mind. So this means you're going to turn your face inside, right? When you're outside, you're looking at all kinds of outside stuff. I'm inviting you to turn your face inside. Now, when you're faced inside, there's all kinds of inside stuff going on. There's feelings, there's memories, there's thoughts, there's all kinds of inner atmosphere in there. And I have to say, if you haven't been working at this, you can turn inside and find it terrifying and go running back out the door. Because if you haven't made it a lovely place, you may not want to be inside. So I'm going to suggest to you that you have to be a little bit patient here, because when you turn inside, you begin to notice what is going on with your mind. And if you haven't been working with it, your mind could be doing lots of stuff. It could be racing. Waste thoughts and negative thoughts go very fast. And so if your mind is filled with just chatter, that's a very fast pattern of thinking. And so your mind races. And that could be what's going on when you go inside. Minds can be restless. They just can't get comfortable, right? No matter what they think about, they're kind of bothered. They have a negative orientation, or everything feels a little off, right? It's a little, the mind can't get comfortable. Another thing that can go on with your mind is it can be wanting, a mind that's always wanting. So, and we develop these habits. If we look at catalogs, right? If we go online, you click through things you want, or you're on social media and up comes an ad. Oh, I want that. I think I need that. This wanting. So the mind is pulling, it's going out and pulling things into it that it thinks it needs. So racing mind, a restless mind, a wanting mind. Then there's the looping mind. So sometimes something happens that really bothers us. Someone says something to us that isn't very kind, or someone who we thought really liked us doesn't act very nice to us, doesn't act like they like us, or we run into someone and they're rude, right? So what happens then is the mind gets hooked and it goes into a loop, and it starts playing that same little scene over and over. You'll pull your mind away and then it'll go right back and it'll keep playing that scene over and over. What this person said, what this person did, what I should have said, etc. The mind some people's minds fill up with negative thoughts. Some people have a habit of being afraid, a habit of the mind of being afraid. Some people have a habit of anger or a habit of worry. Any of this sound familiar? So the mind forms these habits, and when you go inside, you can see what's going on. Some people compare themselves constantly. They compare themselves to their parents. They compare themselves to their siblings. They compare themselves to their neighbors. They compare themselves to people they work with. And it's a dreadful thing to do to yourself, because you're always going to have somebody who's better than you. And then you're going to have someone who's worse than you, and both of them don't work. So become aware that all of the things I've just described in the mind do not serve you. It doesn't serve you to be racing or restless or wanting or in a loop or in a negative pattern. It makes you sad. It makes you disturbed. So the first step in making this beautiful mind that I'm talking about is you become aware of the current habits of your mind. Now, once you become aware of those, then you have to kind of have the corollary thought that I don't really want my mind to be filled with those things. I don't want to be in a loop. I don't want to be restless. I don't want to be comparing. I don't want to be sad or whatever. So you then have the corollary thought, I want to begin to create the mind I want. Right? You have to have that intention. So if you're going to create a different mind, you have to start by quieting the mind, because the mind, in all of the states I talked about, it's racing very fast. So if you're going to make a change in the mind, you've got to slow it down, because you're going to give it something new. It's kind of like if you've ever been around a 3-year-old, right? And you want what they have, and they're not going to give it to you because they're holding on to it tight. What do? You come with the new thing, right? And you say, would you like this? And the 3-year-old looks at what you've got, and they look at what they've got, and they're trying to decide. And you say, it's very nice, the thing I have. And then they give up what they have and they take the thing you have. This is what you're doing with the mind. So first, see what's going on in there and see what you want to change. Second, you begin to quiet the mind. Now, a little bit later, we'll do a meditation, but I'm just going to propose a sequence to you to work with. So first, you want to talk to your mind and tell your mind with your thoughts, tell your mind to begin to be quiet. To begin to be quiet. When you say that to your mind, what will happen is the mind will slow down. The pace of the thoughts will slow down. They may not be of any different quality, but they'll be slower thoughts, right? So you're getting it to slow down. Now you say to your mind, I want you to be still. Not empty, but still. Now, as your mind gets still, you become aware of your breathing that's going on in the background. And that's been going on in the background since the moment you arrived. So now your mind is still, and you're aware of your breath. And anytime an intruder comes in, you're going to acknowledge the intruding thought, and then you put it back out of your mind, and you return to this still mind. And then you say to your mind, I want you to be silent. Now you're asking it to become absolutely silent. And when you do that, you give something to the mind, like you did with that 3-year-old. You give something to the mind for it to work with, because the mind doesn't really like to be empty. So, what do you give to your mind? You can give your mind the thought of something like your fortune. I feel lucky. I am lucky. I'm so fortunate. Or you can give your mind a word like peace. We hear a lot about peace of mind, but it's quite elusive. So just, and when you give your mind the thought, so let's say peace, you're not focused on the word peace, right? It's not you're looking at PEACE. What you're doing is you are invoking the experience of peace in the mind. So I am peace. And you're offering it to the mind. And that whatever you offer the mind in that way, and now your mind is silent, right? So you're giving it something to hold on to. And you allow yourself to have that experience of peace. Now, it's not that the mind is going to only sit there in peace, because you have to work with the mind. It's got to be with you during the day. But if you've just offered it the experience of peace, now whatever happens next, your phone rings, someone walks in the door, whatever, you open an email, but now the state you're in is the state of peace. So whereas before, when you had your extroverted mind, you were just action, reaction, now you're in a state of peace, and whatever comes in, you have this inner space with which to consider how you want to respond to that. Okay? So become aware of the state of the mind, what's going on, racing, restless, wanting, looping. Now you're going to quiet it, you make it be still, you bring it to silence, and you give it some quality that you want it to experience. Now I'm going to do a little experiment here. I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute, and we'll see how you do. All we want to do is to take one thought and hold it for 1 minute, and don't let anything else crowd that out. All right? Just hold on to it. Don't let anything crowd it out. And let's go ahead and go with peace. We're working with peace. Let's go with peace. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now your mind is at peace. Your mind is beyond quiet, beyond still. It's silent and it's at peace. How did you do? How did you do? Okay. A minute is actually a really long time. When you really sit through a minute, it's actually quite a long time. And if you can do it for a minute, you can do it for 2 minutes and 3 minutes and 5 minutes, right? So what you're doing when you do that is you're teaching your mind how to go with you when you make a request. Now, there are some things that we can do to change the habits of the mind, and I'm going to offer 3 things that you can do. Three kind of ways to think about changing the habits of the mind. So the first one is called the full stop. Have you heard of the full stop? So with the full stop, you take the mind, which, as I said, is often racing. It's got lots going on. It's replaying scenes. It's thinking about what's next. It's checking its calendar. It's answering text. It's racing around. And you bring the mind to a full stop. What that means is you push the stop button in the mind. Now, the mind won't want to stop, right? Because it was in the middle of a thought. So it's going to be inclined to start up again. But you push that stop button on whatever was going on in the mind. And you're going to replace the thought that was going on in the mind. Now, I would say this: we all tend to have little movies that play in our minds. Sometimes it's a movie about a past experience we've had. Sometimes it's a movie about something we wish we'd done. Sometimes it's a movie about some current situation. And the movie, it often doesn't last more than, a few seconds, might last less than a minute. But we know it's a familiar movie and it runs in the mind. So when we're changing the habit of the mind, what we're doing is we're putting a full stop to that movie. We don't let the movie finish. Even though we know the movie very well and we know the ending really well, and we're used to playing that movie, we put a full stop to that movie. And we either just go to a place of peace or we replace that movie with a better scene. So if it was a scene about our low self-esteem, we replace it with a moment of high self-regard. If it was a movie about competing with someone, we replace it with a movie of self-confidence, a moment of satisfaction, a moment of contentment. In other words, we intentionally take the old movie, the old habit of thinking, and we stop it in the middle. You don't wait and let it go to the end. You stop it in the middle. You catch yourself at it. You catch yourself comparing yourself with someone else, the neighbors, or comparing your children with their children or whatever. Catch yourself at it and you stop it. Or you catch yourself wanting something and you stop it. And you replace it with this thought of peace or contentment or satisfaction or self-regard or love, or you choose whatever state you want to be in. But this business of the full stop is actually very powerful. In Brahma Kumaris centers, we have something that happens on the hour. A little piece of music comes on the hour. We call it traffic control. And when that traffic control music comes on, we all stop. We notice the traffic in the mind. We bring the traffic to a stop. And then ideally, we bring a thought, an elevated thought at that time. So this is a very powerful method. It's a little tricky because you do have to catch yourself at your habit, but it's very powerful because it begins to intervene in your most persistent habits. So that's number 1. Number 2, forgive yourself forgive others. A lot of what goes on in the mind has to do with blame and regret. I feel that somebody did something to me that I absolutely cannot forgive. That was so bad, it was so mean, it was so hard-hearted, it was so whatever, that I cannot forget it. And I can't forgive it, I can't forget it. And not only that, but I keep remembering it, especially if it's someone I see all the time or have to see all the time. Or it's something that I did that I feel was such a profound mistake that I cannot forgive myself for this. And so I carry around this guilt, and it affects my sense of self-worth. Right? Now, I would say there's another version of this, which is sometimes we're annoyed with someone on an ongoing basis. Right? It's not that they did something in the past. It's not that I did something in the past. It's that every day they're doing this thing, and I am so annoyed, right? Every day. And I have to see them. I live with them, or I work with them, or they're the landlord, or whatever. And so we're continually blaming them. The mind goes through this continual, harangue in there about this. Why does he do this? It's so rude. It's so stupid. It's so annoying, whatever. So that can affect us in such a huge way. Now, if we can move, right? I mean, if this is something but you often can't move because it's in your own mind. It's your own mind that you can't forgive, or it's a spouse or a child or whatever. So what do we do about this? We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to look at this thing that we're allowing to go around and around in the mind. And we have to tell our mind something that's going to allow it to stop. For example, this is who that soul is. This is their nature. They can't help themselves. Imagine what it's like to be inside of them. That would be really hard. Let me just forgive them, not for their sake, but for my sake, for my peace of mind, for my quiet, for my contentment. Let me forgive them and release that. And this is something you have to do really intentionally. In other words, you don't have to go talk to them. I mean, you can, but I don't think it's necessarily that productive. Because it's not about them. It's about us. It's about what we're holding in our mind that's making our mind discontented. So we have to put them in front of us in our mind's eye. And we have to say something like, look, what you did or what you're doing has been giving me a lot of sorrow. But you may not even be aware of it, or you may not be able to do anything about it. So, for my own peace of mind, for my own contentment, I forgive you for this thing that you did, or this thing you're doing. It must be that you feel that you have to do this. It must be that you feel that this is necessary. So I forgive you for that. And I release you from my mind and from any further thoughts about this. Good wishes to you. And then you let it go. And you do the same thing for yourself if you think you made some big, big mistake. At the time, this is what I felt I had to do. Maybe it was a mistake. I see it could have been a mistake. I apologize to whomever was harmed. I forgive myself. And I release myself from any further upset or anguish about this. And then you treat it like that full stop. Anytime your mind goes and gets that feeling of blame or guilt, put a full stop. Don't let your mind play that movie. You've let it go. You've forgiven. You've apologized. You've released it from your mind. Don't pick it up again. So number 1, learn to use the full stop. Number 2, forgive yourself, forgive others. And number 3, gratitude. I know a lot of people for whom this is their fundamental practice. It's gratitude. And you know, sometimes we're so uncomfortable with what's going on, whether it's in our bodies, in our households, in our neighborhoods, in the world, that we can become just absorbed with what's wrong, all the things that are wrong, all the things to worry about. When we do this gratitude move, we are really changing the scene in front of us. I mean, it's a big gross move, you might say. You know, full stop is a little more subtle move, but this is a gross move. If you've got something unhappy in front of you, you pull the slide out and you put in the gratitude slide. And you just take a minute or two and you just reset. What am I grateful for? I love the place I live. I love the neighborhood. I love that I'm pretty healthy. I love that I've got these people in my life who mean so much to me. I love that I found my way onto a spiritual path. I love that I'm able to quiet myself down. I love this community I'm a part of. I love the things that I stand up for. Because as you focus on these things that you're grateful for, what you're doing is you're claiming them. You're claiming them as part of your inner assets. And this gives you a feeling of prosperity. It's not that you're wanting or needing or don't have or can't forgive, all those deficit states. No. I love this. I appreciate this. I'm grateful for this. And you do this really intentionally. You have to notice, back up a few minutes ago when I was talking about noticing your mind, you have to turn inside and notice, I am so restless. My mind is so racing. What am I going to do here? Sometimes it's hard to just introduce a peaceful thought when your mind is like this. So if you give it something like gratitude, it's just a little detour. You're taking your mind on a little detour and you're saying, okay, let's get a grip here. There are so many things in my life that are wonderful. And let me think of 1 or 2 of these and bring myself back to a state of contentment. So I'm offering you 3 kind of moves. There are endless numbers of these, right? It's not that there's just 3. We could talk the rest of the night on all the things you can do with the mind, but I'm offering you 3 kinds of interventions. 3 interventions you can do with the mind. So 1, the full stop. 2, forgive yourself and others. And 3, gratitude. So there's the 3 interventions you can do with the mind. Now, let's talk about your meditation practice, because that's what's really going to make the difference. So, as you know, there are so many different practices available in the world at this time. There's mindfulness, and there's walking meditations, and there's chanting, and there's on, and they're all beneficial, probably. I think, you can begin almost anywhere. With the Brahma Kumaris, what we focus on is called Raj Yoga. And there's a couple of things about this meditation practice that help with the mind. One is that it begins with an understanding of who we are. And it makes the offer, the proposition, that we are inner beings living in a physical body. We are spiritual beings. We are light beings doing life through a physical body. And that inner being is actually eternal. It has a long memory track. And the mind is a part of that inner being. So with Raj Yoga, we make we have the intention to move from being focused on matter to being focused on spirit, from body to soul. So I was talking at the beginning about how, with an extroverted mind, we're just all about matter, right? We're all focused on what's going on outside, what's going on with our cell phones, what's going on with the headlines, what's going on with work, what's going on with the train, what's all of that. Completely matter conscious, body conscious. It's a restless state. When we rack focus and we come inside, now I'm soul conscious. I'm the light that sits behind the eyes. Do you know that term, rack focus? So if you're a cameraman, you might have your camera focused on the forest and the foreground is kind of blurry. There's something there, but you can't really see it. But when you rack focus, now the flower that's on the foreground is clear and the forest is fuzzy. So racking focus. So when you move from body consciousness to soul consciousness, you're racking focus. You're saying, okay, let me refocus here. Let me come inside. How am I? What is the state of my mind? What is the state of my heart? And what can I do right now to move the heart to a place where it's clean, no sorrow, no anger, no worry, no fear, no comparison, no negative opinions of the self? And how can I make my mind, the thoughts in my mind, completely peaceful and contented? This is what your meditation practice can do. This is what you want your meditation practice to do. Of course, it can also make you calm, that too. But what you want is you want to begin to develop the capacity to make your mind beautiful, to make your heart charitable, generous, a benefactor heart, clean. And you want to develop spiritual power. And with Raj Yoga, that's your aim. Yes, of course you de-stress in the process. But your aim isn't just to de-stress. Your aim is to develop the inner capacity to choose the thoughts you have. You're not just bouncing around, bouncing off of whatever you just saw on the TV or whatever you just saw on the street. You choose your inner state and you work from that inner state. And we've all seen people that have this kind of mastery. I hope you've seen them because it's very inspiring. They're always light. These people are always lighthearted. They're kind of, they carry a smile with them. They're very contented. They don't rush. Even if it feels like it's really late and they're going to be late, they never rush. They just move along at the pace that their own clock is inside. I mean, this kind of a state where you have the mastery over the condition of your mind and your heart is glorious. It's joyful. So how do we get there? Well, I'm going to presume that most of you, if we were in a big auditorium together, I'd ask you how many of you have an existing meditation practice? And you'd throw your hands up, right? However many of you there are. And then I'd say, okay, how many of you have a daily practice? And some of the hands would come down, right? So some of you have a daily practice. And that, to me, that crossover makes a big difference. You must have noticed this in your own life, because when you start, you're kind of meditating on the good days or the bad days, one or the other. Either you meditate when things have gone poorly and you're trying to get things together, or you meditate on a good day because my day's working and I have the time. But the thing is, you need your meditation practice to be there for you no matter what happens. When you get the bad call from the doctor's office, or you get a worrying message at work or whatever, you need your mind to go right with you right then and not lag behind in that worried state. It needs to be completely present with you right then. And that will only happen when you have a daily practice. Now, most people who have a daily practice like the mornings. How many of you like the mornings as your time? No? Yeah? Mornings? Okay. So the thing about the morning is that nobody's up yet, right? If you do it early enough, I get up about 3:15, 3:30. You don't need to get up that early. But if you're up before people are running around, then the atmosphere is very quiet and it's very supportive of what you're trying to do. What are you trying to do? What you're trying to do is you're trying to stabilize in that place of soul consciousness. The mind is silent. The heart is clean. You bring whatever state you want to hold into your awareness, and you can hold it for as long as you want. And if there are people who have asked you for support or who you want to support, they're going through surgery, they're having a bad time, etc. From that place, you can send those currents of support. And most important, from that state, you can connect with the divine. So mornings, some people do evenings, some people do both. In the morning, they set an intention. At the evening, they kind of review the day and go through the day, release anything that kind of got stuck. And then some people stop every hour for a minute and slow the traffic in their mind. So let me just ask, before we do a meditation, any questions, anything that's on your mind? And if not, we'll do a little meditation together to close. Okay, I'm going to think we'll just do a meditation then to close. So make sure you're sitting in a comfortable position. Your feet should either be folded under you or they're on the ground. Your spine is straight. Your neck is straight over your spine. And I'm going to invite you to keep your eyes open. You don't have to. And if you do keep them open, you can just drop them to half mast. They can just be looking at your lap or looking at the floor, but they're not closed. This keeps you a little bit alert, keeps you a little bit connected. And if your mind is extroverted, if it's paying attention to me, I'm going to invite you to turn your mind inside. So, and I'm going to invite you to tell your mind to be quiet. So as you tell your mind to be quiet, you should feel your thoughts slowing down. They're still in there, but they're slow. And now you tell your mind to become still. And as the mind becomes still, you become aware of your breath. Your breath in the background. You keep your mind very still. And now, invite your mind to be silent. Ask your mind to be completely silent. And at the same time that you ask it to be silent, give it one thought to fill the mind. So maybe you give it the thought of love and kindness, loving kindness. And any time anything else comes into the mind, you return the mind to this inner experience of love, loving kindness. You have the feeling, the experience that I am love. And this thought, this experience of love, fills the mind. And the companion of the mind is the heart. And so experience that the heart is clean of anything that might interfere. And the heart is filled with feelings of loving kindness. Every cell in your body is permeated with love. It flows like a current of light, moves through the body and then out of the body, filling the room you're in with love. And then beyond the room you're in, to the building you're in, the street you're on, the neighborhood you're in, the community you're in. These currents of love flow out from your inner stage of love. And so strong is this vibration of love that it's untethered by place. And it moves out and it quietly touches everyone you've ever known and every place you've ever set foot. These currents of love. And then to places you've never been and people you've never known. Touching the whole natural world. Comforting the earth and all the places where she's hurting the most. Become aware that you are the soul sitting quietly behind the eyes. Very powerful, very clear, very loving. You are love. And with no effort at all, your attention goes up and you find yourself connecting with the source energy, the source of love, the source of peace, the source of joy. And you become aware that in this state, it's effortless for you to be a wellspring of love and support for yourself and everyone you meet. And then when the moment's right, you pull your attention back into the body. but retain this feeling of love and kindness. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Judy. It was a wonderful talk.
One question, sister. Is this session recorded? Can we get it somewhere?
Yes, this is recorded. It is streamed on YouTube. So you can either go to youtube.com and just search for it, or you can also subscribe to the Manhattan Center's YouTube channel and get it from there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it was a very beautiful.
Yes.
It was a very beautiful session, and I make about three sides of a A4 paper full of scratch for not forgetting anything, but I still want to hear it once more because it is very interesting. I like it. Thank you, sister, very much.
Thank you, sister.